two.
Hello and welcome to Round Robin. Today we have two guests and we're really going to be talking about the military child. My guests are John Gately, who chairs our Military Affairs Committee, and a committee member, Suzanne Higgs, who is also Marketing Director for Peninsula Town Center. And we'll explain in a minute how those two things go together. But first, I want to say you were both military children. And I'm going to ask you the stereotypical question. Where are you from, John?
That's a great question, Robin. I actually came here on military orders in 1990. My wife and I bought our first home here, and we've been here since. But if you had asked me that question before we arrived here in Hampton for an assignment at Fort Monroe, I would have been a bit stymied because as a military child, I traveled a great deal and never really claimed one community as my own.
And that's one of the challenges. It's also can be an advantage, I think, to grow up in multiple places and to see the world. But when you're a kid, it might feel more like a challenge. Like now you can look back and see the good parts of it, maybe.
Well, absolutely. I think military children can either see it as an advantage, the constant transition and the change in the family dynamic, or they can embrace it. And most military children whose parent or parents go through a full military career will relocate 7 or 8 times at minimum in the course of their association with the military through that parent. And for most military children, that results in their trying just a little harder to blend in wherever they are. Mm-hmm. So they tend to work a little harder in school. They want to compete when they can, if it's a socially acceptable form of competition, so they can be recognized by their new peer group.
Make those connections quickly. It's so hard in a new school unless you have a sport or an expertise or something. Suzanne, was that your experience? I mean, what was it like for you?
Mine was a little different. My dad was a Marine, but by the time he'd gotten out, so I've really never had the move around experience. My brothers had it a little bit harder than I did, but my whole family's military. My grandfather served in the Korean War. He met my grandmother in the Army, stayed on at the shipyard, still doing that kind of work. And then my oldest brother is actually in the Army now and has 3 military children of his own. And they've moved across the country from California, and now they're finally coming back to Kentucky to be on the East Coast near our family.
Okay, Kentucky's not on the East Coast, but
for him, he's pretending that it's East Coast.
Okay.
He's a lot closer than California, so that we didn't want to bust his bubble of Kentucky and the East Coast.
So, talk about either what it's like for you or what it's like for other members of your family or people that you work with. These children, I mean, the moving is one thing, and that's like constant change, constant reintroduction. You get to a new school and you're either advanced for that school or you're behind for that school. I mean, academic challenges that kids face. Mm. What are some of the other things?
The military children have been called a nomadic subculture of America, and there aren't a lot of sociologists that really look at this, but there are really unique lifestyle characteristics of their experiencing. For example, they know that their mother or father are going to have to travel on their job, and we've addressed the geographical relocation. Also, men and women in uniform are exposing themselves to the risk of combat.
That's something I think must weigh so heavily on a child. And it would also be true of a child of a police officer or a firefighter. But that risk of losing your parents is in front of a military kid in a way it's not, wasn't for me growing up or something like that. That's scary. That's, a real stress factor.
It is. Actually, my brother served 2 tours in Iraq, and his oldest went through both of them. She is definitely, like John said, the one that tries harder and excels. And, the middle child struggles. John Tyler really does have more of a challenge and has had a harder time with it because he was younger. And then luckily Leanne is so small, she never really had to deal with that fear. But you can definitely see it in Brittany as she's old enough to and it is scary even here. I mean, for my dad, who the only time I think I've ever seen him get choked up was when he said he would take my brother's place. And it's tough to even be on this side of the family and not even experience that as a child. So my heart goes out to not only my family, but the children that face it every day.
And sometimes if it's a single parent or if both parents are in the military, sometimes the kids go to a next of kin. I know a neighbor across the street took care of her grandkids for a year when her daughter was deployed. And so that could be an additional move. It's a different pattern of life, You don't have even one parent stability sometimes.
And I think that's a very important point in that the parental dynamic changes. And let's just assume for a moment, if we can, a two-parent family. When a husband or a wife, a mother or father deploys, there's one person making decisions within that family, and the children learn to adapt to that decision maker. Well, when the other partner returns, when the other spouse returns, there can be a shift in that dynamic in dramatic ways. So military children tend to be very resilient and adaptable.
Or, it can be a hard thing, and they can be stressful and withdraw and really need some additional support. And so you on the Military Affairs Committee work with, I think, focus on current service members and veterans, but you had some members who really said, let's talk about the children, let's talk about the families. How can we support or help or draw attention to?
That's exactly right, Robin, and the way this dynamic occurred is that, as you've indicated, we've had this focus on the active duty force, on veterans and their families for some time. But as we discussed families, we focused on those spouses. And we had three different members of the Military Affairs Committee who expressed an interest independently in doing something for those children. One was Peggy Mertz, and Peggy has led our family support subcommittee for quite some time. She said, we need to do something for those children. Ann Bain, who works government and relations, public relations for the Hampton public school system, has wanted to do something for those military children who are part of the public school system and have unique interests and needs and the like. And then finally, Jeanette McKinney, who's formed a family readiness group at one of the elementary schools in Hampton.
Oh, that's right. See, I forget she has little bitty kids, because I know her high school daughter.
Exactly, and her husband is active duty Navy, and Jeanette has a passion for those children, and she said, I want to do something, and she had some ideas. And as we brought kind of a brain trust together to discuss the options available and recognize that Suzanne Higgs, as marketing director for the Peninsula Town Center, or manager, whichever your preferred title would be at the PTC, is a member of the MAC, and she had the willingness and the capability to start bringing things together to make this happen on Saturday, April 27th from 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. We're very excited about it.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what will happen. This is an event really to honor or appreciate military children. And tell me if the term military brat, which is what I heard growing up, is still acceptable, or if we don't say that anymore.
I actually embrace the notion of being a military brat. There were times when people, again, would ask me for my hometown, and I just kind of stuttered, and they'd say, you're a brat. And I'd say, yeah, and they'd say, so am I. And so we had that immediate bond with one another. I believe there are about 300,000 military children, military brats, if you will, and that's not a pejorative or negative term here in Hampton Roads. There are about 1.8 to 2 million people who have been
who are brats but not children.
Who are brats actually today.
You remain, I think, forever.
Exactly, and in our country, if you kind of roll in everybody who's had a mother or father serving in uniform when they were in the house, there are about 18 to 20 million military brats. So again, it's a shared experience, not unlike people in uniform have a shared experience with one another, irrespective of the time of service or the color of the uniform.
Well, and now, it's not just people who are in the active duty force, it's National Guard and other people who maybe have a day job but are serving in the Guard who've been called up. And so those families didn't think they were necessarily military families, and maybe they don't get moved around, but they still face the deployments.
Thank you for mentioning that, because the National Guard and the reservists, since they have another job if they're not active reserve, or if they're National Guard, they can, if people aren't very careful, get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah,
and in,
you forget.
Exactly. And in marketing and public relations and the like that surrounds events, people just as a kind of second nature, sometimes they talk about active duty and they talk about veterans, but they do not make that specific effort to invite the reservists and the guardsmen,
and they are
invited, and they sometimes can face even more demands in meeting the needs of children than those who are living on the installations of our active force, because they often deploy as onesies and twosies, so they don't have that base of social support and counseling and the like that others do, and that can impact their children in direct ways.
Okay, so we're going to have this event, and tell me again the date.
It's April 27th, which is Saturday. It's from 11 to 3 in our town square, and actually the event has gotten so big we have to take up another part of the center, which is wonderful. It's the breezeway between Cage Rollers and Tivana, so we'll have lots of activities. Really, the event was meant to double as a resource fair for the parents, but also activities for the children. So every participant there will also have a child's activity. So Macaroni Kid, which is a great website that has free or very low-cost family activities for Hampton Roads, will be there, and the kids will make macaroni bracelets. But then Amy gets to talk to the parents about, check out this website. There's a bunch of free stuff to do for you and your family. Navy Federal will be there, USO, Operation Homefront, First Command. A lot of great organizations that offer resources to our military families are there, but also to say thank you to the kids and really have something fun for them to do as well.
So the kids get to have fun and get to feel special a little bit.
Right.
But there's also that underlying support and resource and involvement.
Exactly. We wanted them to know that private and nonprofit are here for you. With the sequester, we're all very confused and all very uncertain. So we wanted them to know that you do have resources here in Hampton, not just Peninsula Town Center, but also nonprofits and other for-profits.
Okay. Well, Hampton, I think, has this particular, I know all of Hampton Roads is a very military-heavy and military-friendly community, but Hampton has perhaps the highest share of veterans and people who retire who want to stay here, and frequently they retire young enough to still have children. And I know you mentioned Ann Bain, but the Hampton school system really, really works and puts out special efforts with a lot of these families. And it sounds like that's heating up a little bit with Jeanette's efforts and some of the other things they're doing. I want people to know to not be quiet, to reach out if they need some special support in schools, in the community, in any adjustment that they may need.
Your points are very well taken, Robin, and the school system has a real passion for those military children, want to make sure that their needs are met. And to give you some sensing of the flavor and how we integrate this very distinctive military-centric community into the event, the opening ceremony will include, and this is just extraordinary, I think, a color guard from Trent Elementary School. And what's interesting about the color guard is people who are familiar with military color guards are accustomed to people bearing arms, their rifles, on either flank or side of this file that advances with the colors. In this case, they're not carrying rifles, because that would be an inappropriate message,
right.
But they're carrying books, because they're students
what a nice idea.
in our schools. Isn't that great?
Yeah.
And after the colors, national colors, the state colors, the standards or flags of the services are posted, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts will lead the assembled masses, if you will. We hope we have a really good showing in the Pledge of Allegiance, and Suzanne has been able to get the Heritage of America Band, which is the Langley
that's wonderful.
Air Force Base group, to play the national anthem as we open the ceremony, and also a service medley. So I think that's another very exciting and appropriate aspect of the ceremony. And there are also going to be ways to recognize these military children through raffles throughout the day's activities, and
just fun.
Is this really for the military family only, or do you want other people to come out and kind of show their support and be
It's
involved?
open to the public. We in no way want to say, no, you cannot join us, you cannot be a part of this, because it's a way of self-service to say thank you. Everyone that comes, the parents will get a bag full of information and discounts, and Langley Speedway actually donated 500 free tickets to come see a race.
They're so community-oriented.
They're wonderful.
They really are.
Each child will get that. Each child will get a Peninsula Town Center and MacBook bag, and then the military kids will get a special sticker that says, I'm a military child. So really just giving them that one-up thank you. And what better way for other kids in the school system or to just be at PTC to stop and say thank you? I mean, what better message than peer-to-peer at that age?
Right, for the kids to hear that. We appreciate what you're doing. We appreciate what your family is doing for all of us.
Exactly.
Well, that's wonderful. And John, if you would just tell us how people can get more information on the Military Affairs Committee or could contact you in case they see this and think, I'd like to know more either about being involved or using your support services.
Well, thank you very much, because we are always interested in reaching those who have a heart for service and want to give back to those who so proudly serve or have served or members of the military family. And I say that as an extended military family, the active duty force, the reservists, the guardsmen, and the like. We can be reached through the hampton.gov website, and it would be /MAC, the acronym Military Affairs Committee, MAC. People could also call the 311 line, which is the Hampton Public Information line, and say, I'm interested in learning more about the Military Affairs Committee, or perhaps contributing my time, energy, and skill sets to the effort to serve those who serve, and we'd certainly welcome that.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you, John, for coming by, and thank you for Suzanne, and I look forward to this event. I think it is nice to celebrate not just those who serve, but the people who support those who serve, and families are so essential to allowing them, to be overseas and to fulfill that commitment and carrying on here at home, so they deserve our support as well. Thank you, and I hope you'll attend this event and think a little bit about the military family, more than just the military member, and what support they need, and to thank them for their service. Thank you.